What's up, good people? It is your boy, bro Troy, aka Mr. YM4C, but better known as Coach TJ, and we got a special edition today. So, as you can see, I am riding solo, dolo, but we welcome everybody, man. Tonight is going to be a special edition of the Bro Code Show. We will have a special guest come through and chop it up about the COVID-19 shot, fatherhood, life after COVID, and next steps for the state of North Carolina. Now, if you've never had a Bro Code experience, please allow me to reintroduce myself. The Bro Code Show is a live talk show created to discuss, uncover, justify, and dismantle the issues that concern us most as brothers, as family, and as a community. And we like to give that to you raw, uncut, and real respectful. Now, our greatest desire is to embrace everyone in positive, popular conversation. So no, we're not in the business of shaming, belittling, or bashing anyone, but we do believe in being comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations, because that's where understanding starts. So as grandma would say, let's chew the meat and spit out the bone. Little housekeeping things, man. If you're listening right now, please like and share this post. Allow the ripple effect to continue. Please help us build our audience. So go to YM4C TV, YM4C Space TV. You'll see the Bro Code logo on the top. Like, subscribe, and hit the little notification bell so that way when we go live, you'll know it. Also, help us build our IG page. Go to @BroCodeShow on Instagram. Hit that like button, man. Continue the ripple effect. We certainly appreciate you guys. So I'm rolling dolo solo, so I'm going to speak with y'all today. So today, you guys are the co-hosts. You rocking with Bro Troy, aka Coach TJ, man. But before we get into that, I want to shout out the bros. They're not here, but in spirit, they still with me. So shout out to Bro Kirk and Bro Smith, man. I'm going to hold it down this afternoon. But first and foremost, I hope everyone is having a great day. I send nothing but good vibes and positive to your way right now, man, through these airwaves. Me personally, my emotions have went from hopeful to unsure in a matter of days. There's a lot going on right now, and it's easy to get caught in that emotion or those thoughts. But nonetheless, I stay optimistic and hopeful, and I keep pushing forward with the tools that I have been afforded to me, taking accountability for my part in helping to leave this world better than I found it. Now, if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube, please drop in the comment section right now in the chat. What are you doing to help bring peace to your life? You know, what exercises, what mental capacity, what words of wisdom, what reading, what books are you reading, what movies are you watching? What are you doing right now to be in a healthy space? Things that bring you joy, that make you happy. So I'd love to hear what you guys are doing out there to do that. And hopefully that can help someone else. Bro Smith says, I'm with you virtually, bro. Shout out to Bro Smith. What's up, brother? I appreciate you holding me down virtually, man. Shout out to you, bro. So when it comes to peace, man, for me as a servant leader and a purpose-driven person, I find joy in seeing our youth smile and really just having the innocence of being a kid. And for some of them, that's really a luxury right now. In the last 18 months, maybe potentially their whole lives, especially the last 18 months, that has been rather difficult. Now, you got to understand, a child really hasn't lived long enough to have the coping skills. They're not mature enough. They haven't went through enough life experience. So when they're made to do something so drastically as it comes to the pandemic and the way it's affected their education, both emotionally and socially, man, that can be unstable like none other. But this past Saturday, man, YM4C in collaboration with NYFO Football and Gridiron Football, and also the Southeast Raleigh YMCA, shout out to Dexter Hubert, off of Rock Quarry Road in Southeast Raleigh, North Carolina, hosted a football academy. And this academy served 34 young men from the ages of 6 to 15 through strength and conditioning skills or drills, agility drills, and also teaching the fundamentals of the game. See, the coaching team included Coach Edwin Campbell from Southeast Raleigh. Shout out to those Bulldogs over there off of Rock Quarry Road at the high school, and also several former NC State players and top-tier coaching professionals. Now, shout out to the Raleigh Firebirds too, man. The Ladybirds came through this past Saturday, and they served 8 young ladies through dance and cheerleading exercises. Also, can't forget, man, our sponsors of the program. Shout out to Papa John's for providing pizza for all of the kids, parents, and staff. And much love to our community liaison and board member, Miss Lisa Green, with Marketing with a Twist, for providing snacks and drinks for everyone. Now, all in all, man, just like DJ Khaled would say, another one. So we're doing it for the community, man. Shout out to Southeast Raleigh as we continue to put good vibes, love, consistency, opportunity, and exposure for our youth, man. So let's jump into this conversation, man. I want to make sure as we unfold this, there's going to be a lot of great information. Please leave your comments and questions for myself or our guests in the chat. Now, this afternoon, we've got a young man by the name of Dr. Richard Watkins. And Richard was born in Greensboro, North Carolina, earned his PhD from UNC Chapel Hill in microbiology, immunology, with a specialty in virology. Now, fellas, audience, as well as myself, please help me bring Dr. Watkins to the stage. Dr. Watkins, how you feeling today, sir?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good. Very excited
Good,
and grateful for the opportunity to be with you today. This is an awesome platform, and thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, man. It's always a pleasure, man. You hanging out with the Bro Coach Show. We keep it light, man. But I'm curious, for Dr. Watkins, like for those that are listening that may not know who you are, may not know your background, let's start off with something simple, man. Who is Dr. Richard Watkins at the core?
A dad, a son, a husband, a North Carolinian. That's who I am at the core. I think all these other things that people may be attracted to, those are just extra, right? I think who I am is what so many of us are, and that's just a dad, a father, and a husband, a son, and that's just who I am. But I think you might be getting at, why do they call you, Dr. Watkins? I think they call me Dr. Watkins because I'm fortunate, I'm blessed, and I would be nothing if it weren't for the people who came before me. And I tell my students this all the time. And I think people fail to recognize the importance of, having a PhD, being called doctor, because there's a bit of irony in having your PhD, especially if you're considering our history. See, I come from a people who were considered to be property. I come from a people who had masters, who were owned by the masters, who were always considered to be less than or underneath the masters. Now, here's the irony. Having a PhD is a terminal degree. And now I find myself, at least academically, above the masters. I just think that is just such a blessing to be able to say, and I try to impress it upon everyone around me, that we are at a time, due to the sacrifices of those who came before us, and even though they weren't able to eat and enjoy the fruits of their labor, the fruits of their sacrifices, I am so fortunate to be able to do so. And so that's why I tell that story so very often. My PhD's in microbiology and immunology, specialty in virology, which is just the study of viruses. I cut my teeth on HIV and SARS, a coronavirus related to SARS-CoV-2, the virus responsible for COVID-19. I got my PhD by doing research in the Center for AIDS Research, as I understood the factors that led to the development of AIDS in HIV-infected patients. And I've got a bachelor's of science in psychology with a minor in sociology from the Fayetteville State University, home of the Broncos. So that's who I am. From Greensboro, born in Tyler, Texas, the son of Pamela Watkins, who passed away 5 years ago to cancer, and son of the person in which I owe my name to, Richard Watkins Jr., head golf coach at North Carolina A&T. And so I'm very proud of where I came, because it allows me to do the things that I'm able to do today.
I love it, man. I love it. And oftentimes, Rich, I think what I love most about what you said is, I've heard before, we don't do it for our first name, we do it for our last. And just based on what you spoke of, one of the other words that came to my mind was legacy. And how are you going to leave it better than you had it? So I love it. I'm curious, with all of the degrees and the love, we mentor kids, and one of the things we always speak to them is finding a way to be a forever learner. Because let's be honest, Richard, college may not be for everybody, but education is. Now, there's always an opportunity to learn, regardless of the circle of influence. So I'm wondering, like for you, how or why did science become a passion for you? Like how did all these ologies, you got all these ology degrees, like how did that become a passion for you?
Well, I thought that science was unique, and I've always liked science. Psychology is a science, sociology is a science. I've always loved sciences because basically it unlocks the secrets of the universe that the Lord has created for us. There's so much that we don't know, and science is simply the pursuit of truth. We don't always know where it's going to take us, and we don't always know the implications of that. But science is just the pursuit of a truth. That is what it is. And I've always been attracted to that. I think the most powerful thing that an individual can have is an imagination. And science is an area that says, imagine, then go after it. And I've always really, really been attracted to that. And virology specifically is because I felt that this kind of battle, this tug of war between people and viruses have always shaped our history. If you look at the history that is humanity, it is a history of infectious diseases. Whether it's the bubonic plague, the Black Death, smallpox, HIV, AIDS, influenza 1918, or COVID-19 today, we've always been shaped by infectious diseases. And I think our ability to recognize and apply our knowledge to that is the only way that we'll be able to get through this. And so I've always really been attracted to the capacity that science has to shape society. But yeah, that's just my point of view. And I'm really, really attracted to it. And so it's just a fascinating area, and I'm so fortunate to be a part of it.
I love it. And we're going to talk more about it, but you said something that really caught hold to me, Richard, was how the world, the fabric of the world has always been shaped by infectious disease. And obviously we're dealing with one now in this pandemic. So we're going to hit on that a little bit later on, because I want to talk more about that. But earlier in this conversation, man, I'm a father as well. I'm a husband as well. A lover of people, and children are my burden. I have a 6-year-old, soon to be 12-year-old, and now 15-year-old. But we mentioned earlier that you're a girl dad. Is that right?
Yes, I have a 5-year-old.
5-year-old. Okay. I'm curious, man. Like you and your wife are, on it when it comes to the process and moving forward with not just health and wealth, but just society and helping people as a whole. You have a heart for people on every different level. But I'm curious, as it pertains to your household and your young lady, your 5-year-old daughter, does that love of science and technology, has that spilled on her? Are you seeing that happen now?
Yeah, absolutely. My wife, Charity Watkins, is assistant professor at North Carolina Central University, and she's one of the leading minds in social work. And so I've always looked up to her. I'm always trying to keep up with her. She's just one of the most incredible people that I've ever met, one of the most gifted minds that I've ever met. And being able to have that in a life partner is amazing. And being married to my wife is like riding a bicycle. When you're young, that bicycle is, you're just learning it, and there's no brakes on the handlebars, right? The brakes are just the pedals, right? And so when you want to go forward, you pedal the brakes forward. But when you want to stop, you push the pedals brake back. That's how you brake. So being married to my wife is like that. There's only going forward. There's no going backwards. And so if you put an aspiration or a dream out there in the presence of my wife, she'll hold you to it. And it's hard to live up to her expectations at times, but I'm so very blessed to have somebody constantly pushing me. And she's not behind me, she's beside me as an expert in her own field. And so there's always this kind of friendly competition between the two of us, with me always trying to keep up with her because she's absolutely incredible. And my daughter, I think the best way to describe how I raise my daughter is understanding that I have a dog. This is going to be weird. I have a pit bull, an adopted pit bull, and we named her Storm.
Okay.
Now, most people say, oh, you named her after the superhero Storm,
Excellent.
like the only black woman superhero. And she happens to have like the dopest powers. Like she can control weather. By the way, I'm just going to put out there, since I have a platform right here, right now, there needs to be a Storm origin movie. Stop playing. We need that. And it needs to star the lady that plays I think she plays Lucky from that television show, Them. She needs to be Storm. I'm just putting that out there. Some of your audience will know what I'm talking about, but I'm just putting that out there. And this will tell you how I raised my daughter. The name actually comes from a story, and it's adapted from an old kind of an old saying. And I'll try to say it as quick as possible because I know we're running out of time, and I just want to tell it really quickly. So once upon a time, there was an amazing explorer, and this explorer was docked at a fishing village. Now, this fishing village was positioned in such a way that all of the world's greatest explorers would dock there. It was just positioned at a central location. And so this village has seen the best come and go. And there was this old man early one morning, so early that it was still dark. And there was still fog from the water that basically covered the dock. And he walked down the pier as he would do every single morning. And he got to the docking location of this explorer's vessel, and he was frozen. He was gobsmacked with how amazing this vessel was, and he began searching up and down the vessel to see who in the world could command such an amazing vessel. And it was at that moment where he locked eyes on the young explorer, and it was apparent that this explorer was amazing. The old man yelled out, "That's a fine boat you have there." The explorer paid the old man no never mind. Insulted, the old man cleared his throat and said again, but a little bit louder, I said, "That's a fine boat you have there." The explorer kept on doing what they were doing, getting the ship ready for departure. The old man realized this and said, "You may have ignored me before, but I will tell you this. I hope you are not planning to depart this morning. See, I have walked up and down this dock for longer than you have been alive. And I can tell you, just by looking at the surface of the water, if you were to depart today, you wouldn't come back. You would perish, because just over the horizon is a storm." The explorer had one response. Laughed. The old man, now feeling insulted, feeling as though the explorer did not heed his advice, started demanding respect, questioning over and over again, "What, do you think this is funny? Do you think this is funny? You cannot laugh at a storm. You cannot survive the storm." The explorer stopped. She stood up and jumped from where she was to the deck of the boat and leaped from the deck of the boat to the dock and landed at the feet of the old man. She gathered herself and rose to where she was meeting the old man face to face. The old man now feeling the entire presence of this individual, kind of like cowered a little bit, but still resolute in his position in the world, said, "Do you think the storm is funny? You cannot survive the storm." The explorer put her hands on the old man's shoulders in the type of firm grip to let you know who truly is in charge, and pulled him into her to the point where their noses were almost touching. And he asked one more time, Aren't you afraid of the storm? She grabbed him and pulled him in even closer, looking him dead eye to eye and said, silly old man, I am the storm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In a nutshell, that's how I raised my daughter.
That's it. Fearless, man. Relentless. There's nothing, no one. Yeah, we call our young men kings, kind, intelligent, noble, go-getter. And understanding who you are, whom you are, and whose you are. Validation no longer becomes valuable. It loses its intensity, and really dancing to the beat of your own drum in a respectful way. So I can dig that, man. I really can. I've heard that story before, man. And the mere fact that's the measure by which you feed into, pour into, and speak life into your children is necessary and needed. We have to build resilient children, strong, resilient children. Indeed. I appreciate that, man.
Sorry for being long-winded. You were like, is this story ever going to be over?
Hey, I knew exactly where you were going. I was waiting for you to say, I am the storm. That's right. The storm needs to be scared of me, right? So nonetheless, just to shout out the crowd. I see you, Monique. What's going on? I appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you like and share. Thank you for tuning in, man. Monique, indeed, you are the storm. So let's get to the meat and potatoes, Richard. Like, man, with all of this focus, and we're talking about infectious diseases, obviously right now, we're 18 months, almost 18 months into a pandemic with this thing called COVID-19. People are up in arms. And you've been working hard, sir, and advocating for the COVID-19 shot with so many people that are up in arms and concerned. Like, what do you say to someone, Dr. Watkins, who brings up the fact that vaccine makers aren't held accountable or liable to the counter effects of the drug? And then now we hear, what was it, 15 million or so that were recalled by Johnson & Johnson. Like, what do you say to someone that's feeling that way and is wanting to, hey, I want to be in line. I want to feel better. I want to travel. But with all of these things that are going on, like, how can I feel confident in this?
That's a really good question. And as you said, that is something that I've been doing, for a very, very long time. Since the pandemic emerged, we have been in conversations, holding town halls every week, multiple times a week, with various groups of people, whether it's schools, whether it's churches, whether it's prison transition programs. I mean, you name it, we've done it. And we get questions all over the place. And I think it's just really a calculation. It's just really a calculation. That's what it boils down to. I think it's easy to kind of ask those questions and kind of weigh out whether you should take the vaccine or not when you're not strapped to a ventilator. There's nobody that is receiving respiratory support laying on different sides of their body just to breathe that questions whether or not they should have taken the vaccine. In fact, older generations have already taken the vaccine with very little reluctancy. In fact, when the vaccine rolled out initially, it was only allowed for older populations. And what the problem was at that point was supply. But as soon as the supply was available, there was a line, there was a queue. Because there was a more immediacy there was more of an immediacy to the urgency of the situation. I think what ends up happening with people is sometimes it's hard to react to a situation if it's not an immediate threat. If it's just kind of off in a distance, there's a tendency to think, I'll deal with that later, or that doesn't necessarily affect me. And I think that has a lot to do with our leadership. Leadership hasn't created a culture where we feel like we're all in it together. Leadership also hasn't created a culture where you have representation from all of America throughout all ranks of leadership, science, and medicine. Sometimes it's not just the message. Oftentimes it's the messenger. Everybody in my family has been vaccinated. Why do you think that is? When my family comes to me and asks what should they do, there's that kind of trust that's baked into it because they have, as part of their family, a virologist. But most communities don't have that. So are they just supposed to trust an institution? I think that's why representation at levels of leadership, at levels of science, and at levels of medicine is so absolutely critical. And I think until we get to that, we're always going to struggle with getting buy-in with something that's so critical. Because this is what is going to happen. You were asking a little bit earlier about how long are we going to be in this? Well, that depends. So long as we have people who aren't going to take the vaccine, we won't get out of it. And it's kind of hard to realize that your individual decision impacts society's trajectory because we're very individualistic thinkers. But that's not who we are. We're all connected to one another, and the decisions that we make on an individual level ripple out and affect everyone. And I think what we risk is the longer it takes for us to get to around 75, 85% of the national population fully vaccinated, the longer it takes, the more likely it will be that this virus can mutate in a way that renders our current vaccination approach useless. And if that happens, we'll have to start all over.
It's interesting. That's interesting. You brought up something that got me to thinking, one of the things that many people will question, or I've heard before people question, is like, this isn't the first attempt that scientists have taken to create some type of coronavirus. It's not like this thing just woke up 18 months ago. But for the past 20 years, all of those attempts have pretty much failed. Now, they weren't in humans, clearly, but they pretty much failed. So, like, I'm curious, I would want to know personally, how can lawmakers and pharmaceutical companies be sure that this shot is safe, especially based upon the time frame that they had to make it in the first place?
So I think you touched on something that's really critical, because I think when I talk to people, the key issue that they bring up is they feel that this vaccine has been rushed. I remember when I first did my first rotation in kind of coronavirus research with SARS, I was invited to attend a meeting on a project grant. And basically what a project grant is a grant that's shared, that focuses on a particular issue between multiple institutions. And I was able to sit there. And this was SARS. So this was more than 10 years ago. And they were doing an investigation because we knew at that time that coronaviruses were emerging from bats. That's their primary animal reservoir or primary host. And you can find all of these coronaviruses in bat poop or guano. And so you can go into guano, scientists can go into guano, and they discovered that there were a lot of coronaviruses in bat poop, in bat guano. And many of those viruses were already capable of jumping into humans if given the opportunity and had a chance to cause disease. There had been like roughly 10 crossover events with coronaviruses into humans, 7 of which didn't really cause disease. But SARS caused disease, severe acute respiratory syndrome caused by a coronavirus. And then after that was MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. And I think we really sensed the urgency at that moment because we knew the next one was right around the corner. And there was no telling how bad it was going to be. And viruses always stand a chance of wiping out entire populations if given the opportunity, right? This is the balance of millions of people's lives. And so we were able to create a vaccine platform that used a technique called plug and play, where you would take a small portion of the virus, in this case, the spike protein, which is present on all coronaviruses, And you would take that sequence once that virus became available and plug it in to the mRNA vaccination platform. We used the mRNA vaccination platform with Zika. So there was already evidence that that worked. And so when SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, came onto the scene, and then the sequence of that virus became available, we were then able to put it into this mRNA platform and create a vaccine for it. So what I guess looks on the surface like something that happened really quickly fails to recognize all of the iceberg beneath the surface of the water, all of that work that went into it. And I was just so very blessed. You never know who you'll meet along the way and who has been just touched with a gift. For Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, the scientist that led the way for the discovery of these vaccines, I went to graduate school with.
Okay.
Great friend of mine. She was at my wedding. I'm talking about electric slide at my wedding. And she was one of the most brilliant people that I've ever met.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that people also have to realize with science is that science gets better and better, right? So remember what cell phones used to look like?
Indeed.
Think about the developments that cell phones have underwent. Why wouldn't other areas of science develop in the same way? And I think that's hard for us to recognize because everybody has a cell phone, but very few people get vaccinated, right? Like usually only pregnant women get vaccinated, and sometimes that's their first interaction with the vaccination. And so we don't really have a society that gets vaccinated like that. But just think of all the advancements in sciences that you take for granted, like the podcast that we're on right now, or the live streaming service that we're on right now, which wouldn't be possible 15 years ago. And so if you apply that development to other areas around you, it would kind of start making sense a little bit more. But we don't have that much access to those areas as we do for this one. So some things we take for granted and other things that we question, but they will all develop exponentially through science.
I love it, man. One of the things that I've heard before when having this conversation, we say this about the kids all the time. We don't know. So we encourage people to do what? Do your research, educate yourself, ask questions, make informed decisions. You brought up a great point as far as the how far technology has come. Why would that be any different than any other platforms? When you're not in that realm or in that lane, it's hard to kind of equate because everybody can pick up the Apple phone and can equate the Apple, but taking that comparison to science could be a real far stretch.
Here's another comparison. This pandemic is always compared to the 1918 H1N1 pandemic, sometimes known as the Spanish flu. It's the only thing that we have in comparison. Back then, we didn't even know what a virus was. See how far we've come. So that just kind of explains how far we've come in our understanding of a wide variety of things. And back then, we didn't even know what a virus was. So you were called the bro code, Dr. Watkins. I'm riding solo today, but Bro Smith, I know he's watching online, but he sent a video. He had a question for you. I'm gonna play it for you, and then we'll get your response. Sure.
Hey, Mr. Watkins. So sorry I couldn't be there with you in person, but I do have a question. I love how you broke down your platform into an acronym that we can all understand. It's important that everybody has shoes, safety, health, opportunity, equity, and solutions. I'm hopeful that if you can expand a little bit more in terms of how your platform would help improve opportunity, equity, and safety, specifically for Black and Brown Americans in North Carolina.
Now, for those that don't know, Dr. Richard Watkins is running for U.S. Senate. So Bro Smith sent that question in. I think it was a great question. It was something that was shared on your platform, on your website. Please help us. What is this shoes concept and how does it help us as a community?
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as safety, everybody needs that personal physical safety. And we know all the challenges that faces the Black community. I mean, the elephant in the room, obviously, is police violence, which we have to admit is a public health concern because the trend, a lot of people get on and say this is a tragedy. It is. But I think the worst part about it is it's a trend. And it's a trend so consistent that it is now considered by scientists to be a public health concern or a public health emergency. In their lifetime, a Black man has a 1 in 1,000 times chance, right? A 1 in 1,000 of being killed by the police. So if you've happened to be in a situation where there's at least 1,000 Black men, then there's a chance that one of them in their lifetime will be killed by a police officer. That can't be the situation that we have, right? We have to be able to address that. Just like we're focused on addressing COVID, we have to address other areas of public health emergencies, but also financial protection and environmental protection, 2 areas that are oftentimes overlooked. I think those need to be made a focus. I think a lot of people of color, specifically Black Americans and specifically Black North Carolinians, are subjected to an environment that is deleterious to their health. Think about the food deserts. Think about proximity to landfills. Think about proximity to hog farms. Think about where our communities are. They are to the extent where you can guess someone's life expectancy simply by the zip code. Those have to be focused on. And financial security, obviously, we need financial security because so much of this is impacted by access to finances. And by having these finances, you're more secure in almost every aspect of your life. Health, obviously, health needs to be provided to everyone. And I think we have gotten into the situation where we look at universal health care as if it's an expense that we can't afford. Let me tell your viewers that there is nothing on this earth that's more expensive than being sick and not being able to get the care you need.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
People say, how can we afford it? We can't afford where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
And universal health care and Medicare for all is cheaper than where we currently are. So unless you don't like money, or unless you just like wasting money, then go ahead and continue with the status quo.
Mm.
And here's something that you won't hear any candidate say. We need to focus on cures.
Mm.
We can have these cures, but we have to invest in science and research now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is when it hits close to home. Heart disease. Mm-hmm. Research has made the way to so many breakthroughs in heart disease, and it can continue to make those breakthroughs. But the more investment we put into it now, the quicker we get to those treatments. Something that hits close to home, as my wife suffered postpartum cardiomyopathy or heart failure following childbirth. And when you're supposed to be enjoying the moment of becoming a father, and having to contemplate becoming a single father right after becoming a father, and 2 weeks prior to your daughter being born, you lost your mother to cancer. So you start thinking about if we had cures, if we invested in science and medicine like we were supposed to back then, maybe my mom would still be alive today. Or maybe, just maybe, my wife wouldn't have had that huge scare that she had. And having representation in the hospital and then research is critical to that, because we don't know what mind holds the keys. We don't know what mind holds the breakthrough. So by only allowing a certain segment of the population to access scientific or medical opportunities as a career trajectory, we decrease our likelihood of finding these cures at all. Opportunity. Everyone needs opportunity to well-paying jobs, to housing and education. I'm preaching to the choir on that one. Equity. That's what it's all about, because everyone needs those things. And since everyone needs those things, those rights,
Right.
A society will fail if equity is not put at the forefront, because equity and justice are two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
And the problems that we face in our society right now is we have somehow thought that equity and justice is something that we can forget about.
Mm-hmm.
Equity and justice is something that can be sacrificed. But I think we're finding out now that we're going to have to make that payment at some point. If we think it's too expensive or it's too risky to look and place equity and justice in its proper place at the pinnacle of our society, imagine how expensive it's going to be down the road, or how expensive it is right now, and then obviously solutions.
Mm.
If somebody isn't telling you about yours, don't listen to them. If somebody isn't telling you about universal health care, but still saying stuff like, I'm going to give health care to everyone, first of all, that's a synonym to universal health care. Don't listen to them. If somebody is not saying equity and justice as the most important aspect of any society, either they haven't read Plato's The Republic or they're in it for their own good. You see what I'm saying here? And I have to ask you, if somebody wants to ask what makes you different, I have to ask you this. Do I feel different to you? Does this seem like a different sort of interview? And your soul will tell you, yeah, it is different. And we're focused on different things. We're focused on the future, a future where these things are possible. Ask someone else to tell you their vision of the future. I bet you it won't include yours. Anyway, that's shoes in a nutshell.
I love it. You know, when we talk about existence, Bro Smith wrote a comment, I think it's so timely. And it says that he is speaking into existence that Dr. Richard Watkins will be on the top of the presidential ticket in 2028. So nonetheless, man, I've got one more question as we wrap this up, sir. And, you know, obviously wanting to give you an opportunity to, you know, talk about the things that are passionate to you. One thing I do love about what you were speaking of, they oftentimes say it doesn't affect you till it affects you, till it hits home. You know, it becomes just a thought or a forethought. And you've dealt with a lot. You know, your wife is a champion for the very thing that affected her when she was pregnant with your daughter, you know, and now arguably turning pain into purpose. You know, you talk about how you grew up in the push for education, the legacy of the name that you carry on with your father, and moving that forward throughout your students and your family. And even that healthy competition that you have with your wife, wanting to continue to be forerunners for trending and new things. But we've got one final question while we wrap this up, and it's another question by Bro Smith. We'll be right back.
Question. Senator Richard Burr's been in Congress for a long time. What are you going to do that's going to help set you apart from his platform over the years?
Go ahead, sir.
Right. Well, I mean, we touched on some of those things on the last question, but I think there is an opportunity, obviously, to make history. And I don't think making history in and of itself is a reason just to do something. I think you should focus rather on shared values and shared vision. And I think one of the things that separate me from pretty much anybody that I've ever come into contact with in politics is just an absolute complete lack of vision for the future. I think politics is always in the present without any forethought of possibilities. And I think that hurt us a lot. I think there's just absolute inability to imagine a better world and what would it take to get to that world. I think I've heard Steve Harvey say this, is that most people operate in the world of probability. And I think that's what our politicians do. They don't operate in a world of possibility. And that's the world that I operate in. And I think I have to, because, right, I have a 5-year-old. So I have to have this view and vision of the world that's better.
Right.
I'm a man of faith and religion,
Right.
and it's one of our promises to ourselves through as Christians that one day we can exist in a place without disease, without poverty. We have that shared vision, and I want to move towards that ideal right here and right now. And there's no reason why we can't. I think that separates me. I think that separates me from every single politician that I've ever seen, even ones that I admire. So that huge vision, but the history, obviously, I don't want to bury the lead. I am Black. I'd be the first Black senator out of the state of North Carolina. I'm 36. I'd be the first millennial senator out of the state of North Carolina. Right? Everybody always talks about where are the new leaders? Where are the new leaders? Well, we have to climb this mountain, right? We don't just appear out of nowhere, right? Nobody just gives power. That's not how it works. You have to take it, right? And give it to the people. And so I'd be the first millennial senator out of the state of North Carolina. And then I'd be the first scientist, specifically a virologist in the age of a pandemic, elected to Senate out of the state of North Carolina, which is so apropos because you can't even spell science without NC.
I love it. I saw that over and over in your social media, man. I love how you put that together. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Richard Watkins, please do your research. Continue to seek out, and continue to educate yourself, empower yourself. So for those that will be joining us next week, we will start the conversation on health is wealth. We'll be chewing into the conversation with Ms. Jolene Andrews, occupational therapist here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, as well as my man, Aaron Hairston, fitness guru. Please check them out. So that'll be next Sunday. That's my birthday weekend. So please, man, check us out this Sunday coming up, May the 2nd at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So for all those who took the time to listen, ask comments, we love and appreciate you. Before you get off, like and share this post now so that we continue this ripple effect. Dr. Watkins, we certainly appreciate you coming through, man. We always want to leave the people with a little positive, and today is no different. So today's quote says, "Take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live." It's your boy, Bro Troy, aka Mr. YM4C, but better known as Coach TJ, and we are the Bro Code.